Okay, sorry for the break. You know, this internet issue has been a normal thing with us, so sorry for that, but I'm continuing. I was talking about the financial performance measures that we use, and I said that we have profitability as one, and then we have return on capital employed as another way of measuring performance. And now we are looking at profitability. And I've indicated to you that under profitability, we have different types of profits, or we have different ways of calculating profit. So one is what we term as controllable profits. And under controllable profits, that is where the division will consider the revenue they have generated. They will take away the cost they have incurred, which is within their control. So controllable costs at the divisional level, they will consider that. And then the difference will give them what? Their profits. So that is the meaning of the controllable profits. And under that, we have some items that will go into the calculation, like variable items, divisional overheads, and so forth. So these ones, you have to read them on your own. Then we have another type of profit, which is termed as divisional profits. The first one that I just explained to you is what controllable profit. This one is divisional profit. That's sometimes known as what traceable profit or direct profit. This is the profit that arises from divisional operations, which can be recalculated, which can be calculated without arbitrarily apportioned central cost. It is equivalent to controllable profit less depreciation on what divisional assets and other non-controllable divisional overheads. So, in simply put, that's the division's own what profits that they have made. And then, as I've read to you, the items that will go on is what depreciation on their assets. They'll take all those things off. And then the remaining one, they'll term it as what divisional profits. Then we have another profit which we term as what net profit. And those net profits at the divisional level, they have to also calculate that by getting their revenues. And then they will less the controllable divisional cost. That is the cost that is within their control. And they will also, in addition to that, they will apportion it with central administration costs. Central administration costs here means that there are some general costs that have been incurred in the company. So apportionments will come in here. You've done costing before, so you know these things. Apportionments may come in here, and the organization will find means of apportioning the overheads that are general to the company and give some amount to the division to absorb. So when they add that to their calculation, then that is what we will get as the net. The result is what we get as what the net profit. Then we have the controllable residual profit or income. That's one too. They will consider their sales revenue all right, less their controllable divisional cost. And then they will consider interest on assets or investments that they have made. Because of the word residual profits here, it takes care of what? All other interests that they need to pay. So that at the end of the day, what is left will be the owner's own income or profits. So that is how that one is also calculated. Then we have advantages of those controllable residual profits, and we have disadvantages of that. So read those things. Then we have the net residual profits. Net residual profits. This one was controllable residual profits. And this one is what? Net residual profits. So the net residual profit to more or less is the same. But here, there will be some overheads from head office that will be what absorbed in addition to considering the interest that I've mentioned. So they will take their sales revenue, they will subtract the controllable costs that they have incurred, they will take care of what the interest they need to pay for maybe other investments that they have made or for money they have taken and so forth. Because you know, when you are calculating your profits, let's even go through the accounting way of calculating profits. When you are calculating your profits as a business, if you have gone in for a loan or you have people's money that you are trading with, you have to consider the interest that you're going to pay to them. That's the returns or the cost of what the capital you are using. So you have to factor in returns. So when you see residual, then it's just about what? Investments, returns that you need to consider. And the net aspect comes in whereby other costs from organization or the general or central organization will be added, and you get your portion of that cost to be absorbed as well. Then it's assumed you have taken every cost or you have considered every cost, and what is left is the net residual profits. So those are the types of profits under profitability measures of performance. Then we have return on capital employed. Return on capital employed too, when you want to calculate it, it's profit over investment times 100, or sometimes the formula can be what? Sales over investment times profit over what? Sales times 100. And you could see that even with this second formula, when you cancel out the sales and sales, you'll be left with what? Profit over investment times 100, and the same thing. So ROSI 2 is what? Capital turnover times profit percentage on sales. So you can also have it in that way, or you can calculate it in that way. And return on capital we have employed, we understand it. So these are basically the two major performance measures that companies have been using, and they have their own what problems and then issues, because it's not perfect. And one will even say that one measure cannot be what? Cannot be perfect or cannot be enough for measuring what performance, because of the problems or limitations that it has. Then we are looking at target level of performance. When you talk of target level of performance, it's like you are setting a target, or there's supposed to be a divisional target, and then that target will help you to assess the performance. So we are saying that notwithstanding the limitations of ROSI and then this residual profits, let me put it this way. Notwithstanding their limitations, ROSI and the residual profit are used as performance measures, so that it is necessary to set some level or standard of what performance to be used as the divisional targets. So when you are assessing the performance of the division, here we are saying that we need to set what? Some standard of performance. What standard are you expecting them to fall within? Or what standard do you want them to achieve? It can't just be open like that. So when you want to assess them very well, then you need to set a standard for the performance that you expect. And that's what we are coming to go through. So setting any form of performance target is a controversial exercise with many subjective elements, but typical factors which would be considered include the following. So the factors that you will use to set the target for the performance include the following. One, you have to consider the company's cost of capital. This, of course, is the absolute minimum acceptable rate of return, and the target level will normally be set higher than this. So we are saying that when you are considering the factors that you will use to set the target for performance, you have to consider cost of capital. What is cost of capital? Cost of capital, I believe you've done finance, so you remember all these things. That is how much it will cost you to get the capital that you are working with, or the capital that you want someone to give to you. Because you know, basically organizations depend on what? Capital from outsiders, and then their own what? Capital. So the fund of the business could be in the form of what? Shares, because it could also be in the form of what? Loans. And in the form of shares, the benefits will be what? Dividend. If it's in the form of loans and other bonds and so forth, then you have to consider what we term as what the cost of that capital you are going to get. So how much will it cost you to get that capital is the cost of capital. And it's the same as the return. The returns on the amount that you are going in for. We have so many names for that. We have so many names for that. It could also be even the interest that you expect to pay. So factors like cost of capital needs to be considered. Secondly, the returns being achieved by efficient competitors in the same industry. So what is the returns that is being achieved by people who are your competitors in the industry that you find yourself in as an organization? So as a mother organization or central organization, before you can set a target for the divisions, you have to consider your cost of capital as a company. You have to also look at the cost of capital, the returns that other competitors that you are dealing with or you are competing with in the same industry are also what's getting. And that will also help you to set your standard or your target. You also need to factor in the risk level of the industry and of the risk level of the industry, the company itself, and then the division that you are dealing with. Because if you want to set a target, what is the risk of the industry that you are working within? And then what is the risk that pertains to your company? And what is the risk of the division that is under your company or that's under you? You have to look at all these things before you give them what a target or you set the standard for the performance. You also need to consider the nature of what the industry, the degree of competition that is there, and then the position of your firm within the industry. How does the industry look like? How does it work? Who are the competitors? And what is your position so far as the competitors are concerned? Let's even use a communication as an example. When you come to the communication industry, we have MTN, which is very giant over there. We have the Airtel, Tigo combination. We have Vodafone and others. So if you are there as a player, how do you see yourself in that industry? Are you strong in that firm or in that industry as a firm? You have to consider these things before you set your target of performance for your subdivisions or subordinate managers. Then you also need to consider the overall economic climate and factors. How is the economy going? How is the economy booming? Is the economy good? What is the interest rate? What is exchange rate? And so forth. You have to consider all these things. What is the inflationary level? The inflationary level, the interest rate, and those things will enable you to know whether the target you are setting will be achievable or not. Even now, let's look at what is happening in Ghana or in elsewhere. Almost all the economies in the continent are being affected by this COVID. So if you are now going to set your target, it has to, those things has to be factored in because it will affect your activities. You know, the business, so many businesses are now collapsing, others are not working effectively because of this pandemic. So that becomes a disaster, or that becomes, it's a different thing, but I'm just using as an example because it's not a pure economic factor. But when you talk about the general economic factors, we look at factors that affect what our economic activities. But this being what a pandemic can also be a factor that can affect your activities. That we have, after looking at these things, we have what appraising multiple objectives. So if you say we are appraising multiple objectives, it means that our aim as an organization is not one. The company has so many objectives that it has set for itself, that at the end of the year or at the end of the period they want to achieve. So if we have so many objectives and want to achieve, these are the examples that we have placed in this table. For example, our objective is what? It's concerned with our sales. So what measure or what can we use to assess that or to appraise that? We can use the sales turnover and then trends by what? The product. We can also use product range, our area, type of what distribution that we use, and so forth. If we have a target like what market share, or our objective is to look at our market share, or to know our market share, or to increase our market share, how do we measure that? We can also be looking at what proportion of markets for individual products and so forth. Looking at our growth, we can also be looking at what other appropriately adjusted for inflation and other things. Labor relations, we can look at our labor turnover. Productivity, we can also look at our machine hours per unit of the item we are producing, because if we waste much time before we can produce, that will affect us, or that can affect our output. If our machine is not very effective, our productivity level will also be affected. So if you want to measure our productivity level, we can look at what the possible measures, like what looking at their machine hours per unit, labor hours per unit, and so forth. We can also have an objective like what quality and the reliability. All these things, we can measure them looking at what we have in this table. Let me first take you through multinational performance appraisal. You know, multinational companies are companies that have what? So many branches or so many divisions under them, or maybe over the continent and so forth. So they also need to appraise the work that their people are doing on their behalf. And it's not all that easy because of the way their structure is complex enough, and then things are also not so much easy to go through. So they have some problems when it comes to this performance appraisal. And one or some of the problems that we can mention are here, like distance and the remoteness from their headquarters is another problem, which increase delays and the information problems. So these are some of the problems or challenges that they can have. They can also have challenges like local pricing and tariff regulations. You know, each country has its own regulations so far as business activities are concerned. Some companies or some countries may have some regulations that will protect their infant organizations. So if you are coming in, it becomes very difficult for you to compete, or they will try to protect them. So these things too can affect the local organizations that find themselves in those countries. And how do you appraise their performance? Currency exchange, you know, your headquarters is maybe in the UK and you have a branch in Ghana here. Exchange problems also account, and then they affect performance very well. One may perform very well, but because the currency in that local country is not doing well, that can affect the performance of the local company. And therefore, if you are praising them, how do you do that? So these are some of the challenges that the multinationals may be confronted with. And I also have non-profit organizations, and these non-profit organizations also have their own challenges. And I will narrow it down to, let's say, the public sector. Public sector has its own problems so far as this appraisal thing is also concerned. So we have problems here, like the key decisions about funds and then allocations are made by the central government and the treasury. That is a problem for them. Beside these problems, we can talk about the major ones. For example, They are saying that output measurement is difficult and attaching cost to the output is even more difficult. That is a major problem. Because if you look at what I have here, it's saying that in summary, whilst performance measurement is desirable in the public sector, there are major problems. And one is what? Output measurement is difficult and attaching cost to the output is even more difficult. It is difficult to also establish cost and effect relationships, especially where there are what? Interactions between various activities and so forth. And then quantitative performance measures may be what? Misleading. So these are the challenges that the public sector may also be confronted with. But beside these problems, one would say that performance measurement is widely practiced in the public sector as well. So I'm not saying that the public sector has its own challenges and therefore they don't do performance measurements. They also do it. But one would say that they also have their peculiar challenges. So these are some of the issues that we may talk about when it comes to performance appraisal. I'm done with this topic, and that's our chapter 7, and I believe we may end here for the semester's course. So this may be the last chapter. I will try and send the notes to you and then this video or presentation to you in addition. Good night, and if there's any problem, let me know. Bye-bye.